So in the last module, I showed you some ways of refactoring your reducers. And I mentioned that these ways or these methods are all optional, and they are. Still, I want to employ them here to clean up this reducer and make the switch case statement a little bit leaner, I should say. So for example, I'll add my update object convenience method, which makes updating objects like we do for the entire state, but then also for the ingredients object here, for example, easier. For that, let's quickly add a new function, and I'll add it in the store folder, utility.js. That's not written like that. That's correct. And now in there, I'll export a new constant, which I'll name update object. It's an arrow function. And in this function, I expect to get my old object and the updated properties, or whatever you want to call it, new properties, whatever it is. And in there, it's the same function as I wrote in the last module. So in there, I'll simply return a new JavaScript object. That's the whole idea behind that, a new object. Distribute the properties of the old object, but then I'll also distribute the properties of updated properties, which should be an object too. Now I can use that update object function in my reducers. So I will import it at the top, import update object. It's a named export, so we need curly braces from moving up the utility file. And now I can call update object wherever I have code like this, where I distribute some props. So in this case here, I'll have my updated ingredients first. That will now be a call to update object, where I pass state ingredients, so the old ingredients. So now I'm replicating this part. And where I pass my new ingredients, this part. So here I'll create a new constant just to have it split up over multiple lines and not sit all of that into one expression. So here I'll have my updated ingredient. That should be a JavaScript object where I have just that key value pair, the dynamic name of the ingredient, and then the updated value, which is incremented. And then I'll pass this updated ingredient as a second argument to update object, and it has to be an object. Updated ingredient has to be an object because this is what the utility function expects. Otherwise, this won't work as expected. So with that, I have the updated ingredients. This is what I assign to ingredients now. But of course, the whole idea is that I also replace this part. So I'll create a new constant, which I'll name updated state maybe. This should be a JavaScript object where I now have my ingredients and the total price, like that. And in the end here, I can therefore then call update object, like this, and pass the old state, which is the object I want to update, I want to return here, and pass the updated state. So still a lot of lines, a little bit more structured and using that utility function. And I just wanted to show how to implement this. We could have squeezed all of that into one line, but that would have been a bit really hard to follow along. That is why I wrote it over multiple lines. So now I'll copy all that code, because when we remove an ingredient, it's essentially the same story, but there, of course, the difference is that we need to decrement our ingredient by 1. And even though it's in a switch case statement, it doesn't like the fact that I reassign a constant here. Doesn't recognize that I can't reach this code. So what I'll do is I'll simply rename these constants. Not ideal, but unfortunately has to be done. Updated maybe. So this is just, again, necessary due to the fact that the IDE doesn't pick up that these constants can never be reassigned. So with that, let's use updated ingredients here. So this new constant I just created, and updated ing here, and then updated state down there. Now for set ingredients, it's a bit easier. There I also want to return a call to update object, so to the function we're importing. I pass a state, of course, and the second argument should be a JavaScript object where I now just copy all the code I previously also passed to this new object. So now I'm using my utility function here too to update the state. And the same, of course, down here for the error. There, I also want to call update state like this. update object, So as always, update object, where I pass the state, and then an object where I set error to true, like this. So that is the ingredient reducer updated with our utility function. Let's now do the same for the order reducer. There I'll also import, as I named, export update object from the utility file, which we can find one level above our reducers folder. And now I'll use update object here too. So return update object, pass the state, and pass a JavaScript object where purchased is set to false. We can remove this code then. The same here, update object, pass the state, and an object where we set loading to false, like this. Remove that code. And also when we get success case here, there we of course also want to update an object. So here I will update an object where I pass the state, of course, and then all these things here as properties of a JavaScript object. Can get rid of the code thereafter. And of course we update another object here, new order. There we also update an object. We get the action order data here as our object. And I want to pass a new property to it, the ID, which should be action order ID. And with that, I can get rid of this code here. So now we got this using our update object function too. And we're nearing the end. Let's also do this for purchase burger fail. Have the state here, loading set to false. So they're also using the update object function. And I'll quickly duplicate this for fetch order start, except for that I here, as you see, want to set loading to true. And for fetch order success, I'll call update object, also pass the state, and then I'll have orders and loading set to false as properties which I want to pass as a JavaScript object, like that. And now the last update object call down there for fetch orders fail. There I will pass the existing state, which is to be updated, and an object where I set loading to false. Again, all of that is optional, but it does reuse that utility function. And if you ever were to change the logic you use for updating an object, you only have to do it in one place. Now let's quickly see if that all works. Loading does work. Managing the burger does seem to work. So that is all good, I guess. Let's quickly go to the checkout page. So that's looking good. Seems to work. What else can we do? Let's have a look in the next lecture.